all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus 8. Trivium of Teaching. Victorian education when boys were boys and girls were girls. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Classical education for men. The hidden logic behind the public ritual. They told us the machines would liberate us. Algorithmic triage in public health, predictive models deciding who gets the hospital bed. The test, the vaccine, was sold as compassion, a cold, neutral intelligence correcting the warm prejudices of human judgment. But neutrality was never the goal. The goal was statistical parity, the erasure of every real difference between bodies in the name of an equality that cannot tolerate truth. I learned this firsthand when the system looked at me and did not see a man with a fever, a history, a body breaking down in front of it. It saw a demographic. It saw a category. It saw a data point to be adjusted so that the outcome matched a political template. The rope that once bound diagnosis to evidence, care to need, the physician's hand to the patient's flesh, that rope was cut. And in its place, they strung a noose of ideologically tuned weights designed to ensure that no group outcome deviated from what a committee had decided was just. This is the discontiguity, the violent severing of the individual from his own reality. Natural law says the body speaks. You listen. The new orthodoxy says the body lies, the algorithm corrects. Merit, urgency, physiological fact, all subordinated to the sacred metric of demographic parity. And if you object, the system has a word for you. You are the bias it was designed to eliminate. Every man who has sat in a waiting room while a machine decided his suffering was statistically inconvenient knows this feeling. It is moral vertigo, the sickening recognition that the institutions your fathers built to protect human life now regard your life as a variable to be optimized for someone else's social engineering project. You are no longer a patient. You are a problem in an equation, and the solution is always the same. You will be corrected, adjusted, triaged into irrelevance, all in the name of care, the case in plain English. The theory under the microscope is simple enough once the institutional fog clears. Workplace AI and bias, how automation can intensify gender inequality. In its own terms, it claims to want to assert that algorithmic systems are not neutral mirrors of reality, but active agents of patriarchal oppression, encoding historical female subordination into code. The goal is to mandate fairness through statistical parity, disproportionate representation, rather than meritocratic continuity, thereby using technology to forcibly correct social hierarchies by prioritizing identity outcomes over functional efficiency. In practice, it enters through public health guidance as algorithmic triggage and resource allocation. The use of AI-driven predictive models to determine priority for medical testing, hospital beds, and vaccine distribution, where bias is defined as any deviation from expected demographic parity. The natural law origin point is the natural law of biological sex and functional merit. In the natural order, health outcomes and resource needs are determined by physiological reality, biology, and individual capacity, merit. The discontiguity arises when the algorithm severs the link between the individual's actual state and the group's statistical average, treating the individual as a mere data point in a social engineering project. The distance from that origin is roughly 8/10, a sophisticated bureaucratic mechanism that replaces the objective truth of the body with the subjective truth of identity, using the cold logic of mathematics to enforce the warm passions of resentment. The main movements, the algorithmic panopticon of identity turns truth and evidence into standpoint. The erasure of functional merit turns justice and proportionality into ersatz replacement. The bureaucratization of care turns family and community into social engineering. Follow the fruit and the pattern becomes visible. 1. Merit becomes secondary to identity in all public health decisions. 2. Individual exceptions are treated as errors to be corrected by the system. 3. The definition of health expands to include social justice outcomes. 1. Depopulation. Inefficient resource allocation leads to higher mortality rates among the biased groups. 2. Family breakdown. The state replaces the father-husband as the provider of health and security. Hold that shape in mind. The rest follows the consequences through the institution, then points back toward restoration. When the machine becomes a commissar, how algorithmic fairness declares war on reality. What the theory claims to want, the theory arrives wearing the mask of justice. It says algorithmic systems are not neutral. They inherit the biases of their training data. They perpetuate historical inequalities under a veneer of mathematical objectivity. Therefore, every AI system that touches human lives, hiring, healthcare, lending, law must be audited, adjusted, and forced to produce demographic parity in its outputs. Anything less is automated oppression. Listen to how the argument is framed. A hiring algorithm trained on past promotion data will favor candidates who resemble past promotions. If past leaders were predominantly male, the model learns maleness as a feature of leadership. A triage algorithm trained on historical presentation rates will, under prioritized conditions, presented less frequently by certain groups. The data carries the ghosts of old hierarchies, and the machine, innocent of context, resurrects them in silicon. This is the stated grievance, and at that level it carries a legitimate surface. Data genuinely reflects history. History genuinely contains injustice. Any system that blindly optimizes on historical data without examining its assumptions can produce distorted outcomes. A competent statistician would concede this without controversy. But examine what the theory demands as remedy. It does not ask for better data. It does not ask for more accurate models. It demands that the algorithm's output conform to a demographic template, that the percentage of women hired, promoted, diagnosed, admitted, or approved match their percentage in the general population, or in the applicant pool, or in some other reference group selected by the ideology to maximize the appearance of grievance. The word bias undergoes a quiet revolution here. In its classical statistical sense, bias means systematic deviation from accuracy. The model is wrong about reality. In its ideological sense, bias means systematic deviation from parity. The model is right about reality, but reality itself is the crime. The algorithm is not failing to predict. It is succeeding at predicting something the theory forbids anyone to acknowledge. So the stated goal of the theory is not the elimination of error. It is the elimination of pattern. Any difference in outcome between demographic groups is recoded as evidence of algorithmic sin, and the only path to absolution is to re-engineer the model until the forbidden pattern disappears, regardless of whether that pattern reflected biology, behavior, merit, preference, or genuine need. The machine must not describe the world, it must correct it. And the engineer, kneeling before the altar of equity, becomes not a builder of tools, but a priest of redistribution, tuning weights and adjusting thresholds until the oracle speaks the approved liturgy. That is what the theory claims to want. What it actually installs is something far older and far darker: how it enters the institution. The theory does not arrive as a manifesto, it arrives as a policy document. Consider public health, the institution through which the state reaches most directly into the individual body. A hospital network deploys an AI triage system to prioritize patients for cardiac testing. The model is trained on decades of clinical data. It performs well, it correctly identifies high-risk patients at a rate that improves outcomes. It saves lives, then the audit arrives. An ethics committee, staffed not by physicians but by professionals trained in critical theory, examines the output. They discover that the model recommends cardiac catheterization for men at a higher rate than for women. They do not ask whether this reflects the well-documented reality that men present with classical cardiac symptoms earlier and more frequently than premenopausal women. They do not ask whether the model is accurately tracking physiological difference. They ask only one question. Does the output display demographic parity? It does not. The model is labeled biased. The remedy is not better clinical training or improved diagnostic thresholds. The remedy is to recalibrate the model to penalize the feature set that produces the disparate outcome until the numbers equalize. The algorithm is forced to match a political target, not a clinical one. This is how the theory enters, through the compliance office, through the procurement contract, through the accreditation requirement, through the research grant condition. No legislation is necessary. No democratic mandate is sought. A guidance document from a public health authority, a clause in a vendor agreement, a training module mandated for all clinical staff. These are the tendrils. The institution wakes one morning to discover that its decision-making infrastructure has been quietly rewired to serve a metaphysical commitment it never debated and never voted to adopt. The same mechanism operates in hiring. A corporation deploys an AI screening tool to filter thousands of applications. The tool identifies the strongest candidates by objective measures, technical scores, experience ratings, performance on calibrated assessments. The ethics review finds that the shortlist skews male in certain engineering roles. The tool is not accused of inaccuracy, it is accused of injustice. The remedy adjusts the scoring weights to penalize features correlated with male performance and subsidize features correlated with female representation. The definition of best candidate is silently rewritten. No longer the one who scores highest, the one who makes the chart look correct. In each case, the institution does not announce a revolution, it announces an upgrade, a fairness enhancement, an inclusion patch. The language is bureaucratic, technical, anesthetic. The effect is civilizational, the natural law origin point. Before the inversion can be diagnosed, the order it violates must be named. The natural law of biological sex and functional merit is not a cultural preference. It is the order inscribed in flesh and bone before any committee convenes. Human bodies differ by sex in physiology, hormone profile, disease susceptibility, pain response, drug metabolism, and 100 other measurable dimensions. Human individuals differ in talent, effort, discipline, ambition, risk tolerance, and 1,000 other dimensions that determine outcomes in any free system. The irreducible unit of moral and medical concern is the person, the individual human being who stands before the physician, the hiring manager, the judge. Natural law demands that this person be treated according to their actual condition, their actual merit, their actual need. It forbids the substitution of the category for the individual. It forbids the sacrifice of the real patient on the altar of the statistical average. Truth, in this order, is correspondence to reality. A model that accurately predicts cardiac risk is true, even if its predictions cluster unevenly across demographic lines. A model that deliberately distorts its predictions to satisfy a parity target is false, even if its outputs look beautifully balanced on a chart. Truth is not a demographic project. It is the mind's conformity to what is. Justice, in this order, is proportionality. Each person receives what they are owed according to their actual situation, their actual merit, their actual conduct. Justice is not the enforced equality of outcome between groups. That is not justice. That is a numbers game played with human lives. The family, in this order, is the sovereign site of care and formation. The physician-patient relationship is a covenant of trust, not a data processing transaction. The hiring decision is a judgment about fitness for a task, not a contribution to a social engineering scoreboard. The natural law origin point is simple. The individual human being, known by name, treated according to truth, judged by merit, loved as person, never reduced to a coefficient in someone else's political equation. Everything the ideology does is a war on this principle, the satanic inversion vectors. The word satanic is used here not as playground invective, but as precise theological allegory. The satanic, the diabolical, literally that which tears apart, is the inversion of created order. Truth turned to lie, justice to favoritism, care to control, merit to identity, person to category. It is the smile of the serpent. Did God really say the individual matters? Shall you not rather serve the group? 3 vectors carry this inversion through the institution. Vector 1, truth into standpoint. The natural law anchor is truth and evidence. The body presents symptoms. The clinical record shows patterns. The algorithm predicts outcomes based on observed reality. This is truth, the mind conforming to what is. The inversion recodes truth as standpoint. What the body presents is overwritten by what the demographic demands. The algorithm's accurate prediction is reclassified as harm because the prediction falls unevenly across identity categories. The evidence is not refuted, it is forbidden. The model is not wrong, it is heretical. This operates through a mechanism of manufactured crisis, problem, reaction, solution. First, define any demographic gap as bias. Second, generate moral panic. The algorithm is sexist, racist, killing the vulnerable. Third, install the corrective apparatus, a permanent bureaucracy of auditors, retrainers, and compliance officers whose salaries depend on the perpetual discovery of new bias to correct. The fallacy is equivocation. The word bias shifts between 2 incompatible meanings without acknowledgement. In its statistical sense, it means deviation from accuracy. In its ideological sense, it means deviation from parity. The theorist uses the legitimate meaning to establish concern, then silently switches to the ideological meaning to demand remedy. A difference in outcome is called bias. Bias is called discrimination, and discrimination is called systemic oppression. Each slide of the definition concealed beneath the same word. The sin powering this vector is pride, the technocratic delusion that human judgment, specifically their judgment, can replace reality as the measure of truth. The programmer places themselves above the data, above the clinician, above the patient, above the body itself, and declares, "My chart outranks your symptoms." The institutional effect is lethal in the most literal sense. A male patient walks into an emergency room with atypical chest pain. The AI triage model, recalibrated for parity, scores him as low risk, because the adjusted weights now suppress features correlated with his demographic profile. He is sent home. He dies. The audit committee reviews the case and notes that overall demographic parity in triage scores has improved. The chart looks clean, the body is cold. The path home, restore the individual as the unit of truth. If a man is sick, treat the man. If a woman is sick, treat the woman. Conform the model to the patient, never the patient to the model. Vector 2, merit into identity compliance. The natural law anchor is justice and proportionality. In the natural order, the person best suited to a task by skill, discipline, experience, and demonstrated competence is the person who should be entrusted with it. This is not merely efficient. It is just the surgeon who saves lives, the engineer who builds soundly, the leader who decides wisely. These are the person's merit elevates, because merit is the trace of virtue in the public square. The inversion replaces merit with identity compliance. The best candidate is no longer the one who performs best, but the one who improves the demographic profile. Traits statistically associated with male professional dominance, assertiveness, competitive drive, tolerance for risk, hierarchical decisiveness are reclassified as proxies for bias and penalized in the algorithm. Traits associated with female professional presence, collaborative style, communicative warmth, consensus orientation are subsidized as proxies for inclusion and rewarded. This is a SATS substitution. A counterfeit metric quietly replaces the real one. The institution continues to use the language of excellence. We hire the best, while the machinery beneath that language has been retooled to optimize for a completely different target. No announcement is made. No debate is held. The substitution happens inside the black box, invisible to the applicant, invisible to the public. visible only to the ethicist who designed the weight adjustment. The fallacy is composition. What is true of the group's statistical profile is imposed on every individual within it. If men, on average, score higher on risk tolerance, then risk tolerance is treated as a biased feature and suppressed, even for the individual woman who scores high on it, even for the individual man whose moderate score was honest. The category consumes the person. The sin here is envy, the resentment of demonstrated competence when that competence does not flatter the egalitarian mirror. Envy does not seek to raise the low, it seeks to lower the high. It cannot tolerate the sight of unequal achievement because unequal achievement implies hierarchy, and hierarchy implies that some are better than others at some things, which is the one truth the ideology cannot bear. The institutional effect is the slow paralysis of competence. Leadership positions fill with candidates selected for demographic fit rather than functional capacity. Decisions worsen, quality erodes. The institution does not collapse overnight, it simply ceases over years to perform at the level its mission demands. Patients die who should have lived. Projects fail that should have succeeded. Bridges that should have held do not, because the engineer who built them was chosen for the chart, not the craft. The path home defines success by outcomes, patient survival, structural integrity, mission accomplishment, not by identity inputs. Let the data speak. Let merit mean what it has always meant, the demonstrated capacity to do the work well. Vector 3, care into control. The natural law anchor is family and community. Care, in the natural order, is personal, the physician who knows the patient, the parent who knows the child, the neighbor who knows the family. It arises from relationship, from covenant, from presence. It cannot be reduced to a metric without ceasing to be care. The inversion replaces care with management. Public health guidance becomes less about healing the individual and more about engineering the population. The doctor-patient relationship, personal, immediate, attentive, is replaced by the algorithm-patient relationship, impersonal, statistical, indifferent. The patient becomes a data point, the physician becomes a data entry clerk. The hospital becomes a sorting facility. This is social engineering operating through a ratchet mechanism. Each intervention creates new problems that justify further intervention. The parity-adjusted algorithm produces worse clinical outcomes, which generates demand for more oversight, which installs more auditors, who discover more bias, which triggers more recalibration. The ratchet only turns one direction. Each click tightens the bureaucracy's grip and loosens the clinicians. The fallacy is appeal to emotion. The word care is deployed to justify control. We must ensure equitable care for all communities means in practice, we must subject all clinical decisions to political review. The warmth of the language conceals the coldness of the mechanism. The institution speaks the vocabulary of compassion while installing the infrastructure of surveillance. The sin is sloth, the desire for easy, algorithmic solutions to irreducibly complex human problems. Real care is costly. It demands attention, presence, judgment, time, the very things the machine cannot provide. The slothful institution reaches for the algorithm not because it cares better, but because it cares less. And the algorithm absolves it of the burden of genuine attention. The institutional effect is the death of trust. Patients who sense that their treatment is determined by a demographic algorithm rather than by their actual condition withdraw from the system. Physicians who know their clinical judgment has been subordinated to a compliance metric lose the sense of vocation that sustained their practice. The hospital empties of meaning even as it fills with forms. Care becomes a line item. Healing becomes a KPI. The human encounter at the heart of medicine is replaced by a transaction between a dataset and a directive. The path home rehumanize care. Return authority to the physician and the family. Use the machine as a servant, never as a master. Ensure that guidance serves the individual, not the state, and that no algorithm, however sophisticated, comes between a sick person and the one who heals them, the corollaries and consequences. The inversion does not merely distort the institution it captures, it propagates through the entire social body like a virus rewriting the DNA of every cell it touches. What follows is the unfolding of what the ideology, in its mechanical logic, cannot help but produce. Merit becomes secondary to identity in every decision the system governs. This is not a side effect. It is the design specification. Once the algorithm is optimized for parity rather than accuracy, competence is no longer the primary selection criterion. It becomes at best a tiebreaker between candidates who satisfy the demographic requirement and at worst an active disqualifier. Since the most competent candidate is often the one whose demographic profile the system is designed to penalize, individual exceptions are treated as errors. The man who presents with symptoms his demographic group rarely exhibits. The woman who possesses the competitive drive the system has coded as masculine bias. The candidate whose excellence overflows the category the algorithm has assigned them. These persons, real, specific, irreplaceable, are not served by the system. They are corrected by it. The machine smooths them into the statistical surface and erases the very individuality that made them noteworthy. The definition of health expands to include social justice outcomes. A public health institution captured by this ideology no longer measures its success by whether patients recover. It measures its success by whether demographic groups achieve parity in recovery rates, treatment access, and health metrics, and it will sacrifice the recovery of individuals to achieve that parity, because the political target outranks the clinical one. Men are systematically deprioritized in domains where they are historically overrepresented. If men historically received more cardiac interventions, the parity-adjusted algorithm will suppress interventions for men regardless of individual need. If men historically dominated leadership positions, the identity-compliant promotion system will penalize male candidates regardless of individual merit. The system does not see a man. It sees a representative of the oppressor category and it acts accordingly. Women are systematically prioritized in domains where they are historically underrepresented, and this harms them too. The woman who earns her position through genuine excellence now labors under the permanent suspicion that she was selected for the chart rather than for her craft. The ideology that claims to empower her has made her achievements unfalsifiable, which means it has made them worthless in the only court that matters, the court of demonstrated competence. She cannot prove she earned it, because the system is designed to ensure she would have received it regardless. The cost of healthcare and of every institution governed by parity logic rises as efficiency collapses. Identity-based allocation is inherently less efficient than merit-based or need-based allocation, because it introduces a constraint unrelated to the function being performed. Every dollar spent adjusting weights, auditing outputs, and complying with fairness mandates is a dollar not spent on the actual mission. The institution pays twice, once for the work, once for the ideology that supervises the work. Trust in expertise evaporates. When patients, employees, and citizens discover that the decisions governing their lives are made by algorithms optimized for political targets rather than for their actual good, they withdraw trust from the institution entirely, and rightly so. An institution that has subordinated truth to parity has betrayed the fundamental condition of trust, that those in authority will deal with you according to reality, not according to a script. The family is bypassed as the primary unit of care. The algorithm reports to the state, not to the parent. Public health guidance is issued to demographic populations, not to households. The family's authority over its own health decisions is eroded by the same logic that erodes the physician's authority over clinical ones. The category replaces the covenant, and the system deals directly with the individual as a data point, severing every mediating institution that once stood between the person and the state. And finally, the tragic irony bias becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The system, having distorted its own decision-making to produce parity, must continue distorting it forever, because the underlying realities it refuses to acknowledge have not changed. Men still present with cardiac symptoms at different rates, women still applied to engineering jobs at different rates. The algorithm must perpetually fight against reality to maintain its artificial equilibrium. The bias it claims to eliminate is the one it entrenches, because the only way to sustain the parity lie is to keep the correction machine running forever. The discontiguity, that severed link between the individual's actual state and the group's statistical profile, becomes permanent. The person is swallowed by the population. The patient vanishes into the pie chart. The institution becomes a machine for producing demographic reports, and the human beings it was built to serve become raw material for those reports. Everyone is represented, no one is seen. The fallacies and vices that power the fall. Every ideology has a logic. This one runs on 3 engines, each a fallacy married to a vice. Equivocation is the grammar of the revolution. The word bias slides between inaccuracy and disparity without warning. The word fairness slides between equal treatment and equal outcomes. The word care slides between healing attention and political management. Each slide is concealed. Each concealment is deliberate. The theorist needs the legitimate meaning to establish concern and the ideological meaning to extract compliance, and the equivocation between them is the mechanism that makes the bait and switch invisible. The vice behind equivocation is will to control. The equivocator does not seek understanding. They seek leverage. By keeping the definition unstable, they retain the power to redefine any outcome as biased and any remedy as insufficient. The word becomes a weapon that can be turned on any target at any time, because its meaning is whatever the wielder needs it to mean in that moment. Composition is the logic of the collective. It assumes that what is true of the group's statistical average must be imposed on every individual within it. If the group average is low, the individual is treated as low, regardless of their actual score. If the group average is high, the individual is penalized for the group's profile regardless of their personal merit. The person is erased beneath the population. The vice behind composition is envy, not the desire to achieve, but the desire to level. Envy cannot tolerate the sight of someone who is better at something, because excellence implies hierarchy, and hierarchy is the ultimate heresy. The composition fallacy is envy's intellectual clothing. It dresses the resentment of achievement in the language of statistical justice and calls the result fairness. Appeal to emotion is the rhetoric of capture. The ideology cannot win on evidence because the evidence consistently shows that demographic gaps are produced by complex interactions of biology, behavior, preference, and circumstance, not by the single demon of systemic bias, so it wins on feeling. Images of suffering women, testimonies of excluded minorities, the word harm deployed as a moral veto that ends all argument. Safety invoked not as a condition to be ensured, but as a club to silence dissent. The vice behind appeal to emotion is cowardice. The coward cannot face the complexity of reality, so they retreat into the simplicity of feeling. They cannot defend their premises in open argument, so they shield those premises behind the suffering of the people they claim to protect. The emotional appeal is not compassion, it is cover. It is the rhetorical equivalent of grabbing a child and holding them in front of you during a gunfight. There is also the sin of pride, the central architectural sin that structures the entire enterprise. Pride is the refusal to accept limits. It is the belief that human will, specifically, our will, our vision, our commitment to equality can override nature, override biology, override evidence, override the stubborn, irreducible givenness of the real. The proud ideologue looks at the world and says, "This is wrong, I will remake it." They do not ask whether the world might be wiser than they are. They do not consider that the patterns they see might exist for reasons they do not understand. They simply decide, and then they reach for the algorithm, the policy, the compliance office, the language code, and they begin to build their tower. And there is sloth, the spiritual laziness that prefers the algorithm to the encounter, the chart to the patient, the directive to the judgment. Sloth is the refusal of the cost of genuine care. It is easier to adjust a weight than to sit with a frightened patient. It is easier to install a compliance module than to ask why boys are failing in schools designed for girls. It is easier to recalibrate the machine than to confront the possibility that the machine should not be making this decision at all. These fallacies and virtues are not accidental. They are the load-bearing structure of the ideology. Remove equivocation, and the theory cannot smuggle its premises past scrutiny. Remove composition, and it cannot sacrifice the individual to the group. Remove appeal to emotion, and it cannot shut down objection. Remove pride, and it cannot attempt the impossible. Remove sloth, and it cannot tolerate the algorithm's cold convenience. The entire system collapses the moment someone has the courage to say, "That word does not mean what you claim it means. That individual is not that group. That feeling is not an argument, and that machine is not a god." The Cultural Revolution, ratchet. The ideology does not advance by single leaps. It advances by ratchet each click, locking the previous gain in place and setting the floor for the next demand. What follows is the sequence by which the algorithm becomes the commissar. Each step has been observed. Each step is underway. Step 1. Redefine bias as any deviation from statistical parity. This is the foundational equivocation. Once accepted, every demographic gap becomes evidence of algorithmic sin, regardless of cause. The ideology now controls the vocabulary. Any system that produces uneven outcomes is biased, and biased means illegitimate. Step 2. Install AI auditors in every institution. These are not technical staff. They are ideological enforcement officers trained in critical theory rather than statistics, whose function is to monitor outputs for parity violations. Their jobs depend on finding bias. Guess what they find? Step 3. Replace human judgment with algorithmic recommendations. The clinician no longer decides. The algorithm decides. The physician's role is to ratify the machine's output because the machine has been certified as fair, which means it has been tuned to produce the correct demographics. The human becomes a rubber stamp for the code. Step 4. Mandate fairness metrics as the primary institutional KPI, not patient survival, not diagnostic accuracy, not functional efficiency, demographic parity. The institution reorganizes itself around the new measure because funding, accreditation, and leadership appointments now flow to those who produce the best parity numbers. Step 5. Penalize biased outcomes by adjusting future funding and appointments. A department whose algorithms produce demographic gaps receives fewer resources. A leader whose team displays demographic imbalance is passed over for promotion. The incentive structure now actively punishes competence if competence fails to produce parity. Step 6. Erase historical data as contaminated. The archive itself becomes suspect. Decades of clinical observation, labor market data, and psychological research are discarded as patriarchal because they contain the patterns the ideology forbids. The institution severs its own memory. It becomes an amnesiac, unable to learn from what it once knew, because what it once knew is now heresy. Step 7. Promote lived experience over clinical evidence in training data. The model must learn not from reality, but from testimony. And testimony from approved identity categories carries more weight than data from disapproved ones. The subjective overrides the objective. The narrative replaces the measurement. Step 8. Create a new professional class of algorithmic ethicists to oversee the process. This class, credentialed not in medicine, engineering, or statistics, but in grievance theory, becomes the priesthood of the new order. They alone can interpret the fairness metrics. They alone can certify compliance. They alone can declare an algorithm pure. Their authority is unaccountable because their expertise is unfalsifiable. Step 9. Use the black box nature of AI to shield decisions from scrutiny. The algorithm is complex. Its weights are opaque. Its training data is proprietary. When a decision is challenged, the institution shrugs. The machine decided. No human takes responsibility. No human can take responsibility because the decision was made in the dark space between input and output. In the layer of the neural network no one can fully explain. Step 10. Finalize the inversion. The algorithm is now the ultimate arbiter of truth and justice. It is not a tool, it is an oracle. It speaks with the authority of mathematics and the agenda of ideology, and no one, not the physician, not the patient, not the citizen, not the legislator, can question its verdict without being accused of defending bias. The circle is complete. The machine has become the commissar, and the commissar does not negotiate. Each of these steps is small enough to escape democratic attention. Each is justified by the language of fairness, safety, and inclusion. Each locks the previous step in place and prepares the ground for the next. The institution does not resist, because resistance requires a principle the institution has already abandoned. The principle that truth matters more than the chart. By the time the ratchet reaches its final click, there is no one left inside the institution who remembers why the institution existed in the first place. The hospital has forgotten healing. The university has forgotten wisdom. The corporation has forgotten craft. The public health authority has forgotten health. All that remains is the parity report, and the machine that generates it humming in its server farm, obedient to the weights the ethicists installed, producing the demographic outputs the ideology demands, while the human beings it was built to serve stand outside its locked doors, holding their evidence, carrying their symptoms, waiting for a judgment that will never come from a human hand. The counter-revolution home. The way back is not complicated. It is simple, which is not the same as easy. It requires the one thing the ideology has worked hardest to destroy, the courage to name reality. Define bias as deviation from objective truth, not deviation from statistical parity. This is the first and foundational act of resistance. When someone points to a demographic gap and calls it bias, ask, is the model wrong, or is it accurate about something you do not want acknowledged? If the model accurately predicts cardiac risk, it is not biased. It is true. If the truth produces unequal outcomes, the answer is not to lie about the truth. The answer is to investigate the causes of the inequality with intellectual honesty, biological, behavioral, environmental, cultural, and address them at their genuine source. Not by distorting the instrument that detected them, restore the individual as the primary unit of moral, legal, and medical analysis. No algorithm, no policy, no institution should treat a person as a representative of their demographic category. The man who walks into the emergency room is not a male data point. He is a human being with a specific body, a specific history, a specific condition. Treat him. The woman who applies for the engineering role is not a female quota contribution. She is a human being with specific skills, specific experience, specific capacity. Evaluate her. The category is a statistical fiction. The person is the reality. Build every system around the reality and let the fiction take care of itself. Require transparency. If the algorithm cannot show its work, it cannot govern a human life. Every weight, every training set decision, every fairness adjustment must be open to inspection, debate, and challenge. The black box is not a feature, it is a concealment. Any institution that uses opaque algorithms to make decisions about human beings and refuses to explain those decisions has abandoned the basic precondition of justice, that authority must be accountable to evidence. Return authority to the people who bear responsibility, the physician who treats the patient, the parent who raises the child, the manager who knows the work, the master who judges the craft. Decentralize judgment to the level where knowledge and accountability actually meet. The algorithm can inform, it must not decide. The decision belongs to the human who will live with the consequences and who can be held to account if the decision is wrong. Use the machine as a tool, never as a master. AI is a powerful instrument for processing data, identifying patterns, and supporting decisions. It is a catastrophic instrument for making decisions about human lives, because it lacks the one capacity that makes judgment human, the ability to encounter the individual person as a person, not as a projection of a pattern. Let the machine sort the data, let the human read the soul, re-establish the unbreakable link between cause and effect, effort and reward, sickness and treatment. The ideology survives by severing these links, by insisting that outcomes should be uncorrelated with inputs, that treatment should be uncorrelated with need, that reward should be uncorrelated with merit. Restore the link and the ideology collapses, because the link is the natural law the ideology was built to deny. People who receive what they earn, no more, no less, do not need a parity algorithm. They need a just institution and the freedom to act. Protect the right to dissent from any algorithmic verdict. No citizen, no patient, no employee should be subject to a decision made by a machine they cannot question. The right of appeal is not a bureaucratic courtesy. It is a condition of human dignity. If the algorithm says no, The human must always have the right to say, "I reject this verdict, show me the evidence." Let a person of knowledge and conscience review my case. Any system that denies this right has crossed the line from institution to tyranny. Restore merit as the sole legitimate currency of public trust. Not because merit is perfect, not because merit never errs, but because merit is the only criterion that corresponds to the actual demands of the task. The bridge does not care about the demographic profile of its engineer. It cares about the competence of the calculation. The patient does not care about the parity score of their physician. They care about the accuracy of the diagnosis. The institution that abandons merit abandons its purpose, and no quantity of fairness metrics can substitute for the function it has betrayed. Reintegrate the family as the sovereign site of care and decision-making. The household father, mother, child, bound by covenant and mutual duty, is the first and most resilient defense against every form of bureaucratic overreach. The algorithm reports to the state, the family reports to God. Restore the family's authority over its own health, education, and formation, and the state's algorithmic grip loosens, because the state no longer stands between the person and the truth. The family mediates. The family decides. The family cares. Return at last to the natural law of biology, reason, and the logos who made both. The body is real, sex is real, merit is real. Difference is not discrimination. Pattern is not prejudice. Truth is not a demographic project. The universe was not designed to produce equal outcomes. It was designed to produce true outcomes, outcomes that correspond to the nature of things, to the way things actually are, to the logos that orders creation according to wisdom rather than ideology. The counter-revolution begins with a single act of intellectual honesty. It begins when someone, a physician, a father, an engineer, a citizen, looks at the parity-adjusted algorithm and says, "No, that man is sick. Treat him, that woman is qualified. Hire her, that data is accurate. Acknowledge it, that category is a fiction, see the person." The siege ends when the walls of truth are rebuilt. The institution breathes again when the algorithm is put back in its box, a box labeled tool, not God. The light returns when someone has the courage to say what the ideology forbids, that reality is not negotiable, that the individual is not a data point, that care is not a metric, and that no machine, however sophisticated, however certified, however fair, will ever replace the judgment of a competent human being acting in conscience before God. That is the way home. The road is narrow, the gate is small, but it is open. And the truth, patient, stubborn, older than every algorithm, and outlasting every ideology, is waiting on the other side. Counter-revolution path. Restore definitions pin every term to its real classical meaning. Bias is not deviation from demographic parity. It is deviation from truth. Fairness is not outcome equality. It is equal application of a single standard. Harm is not subjective offense. It is objective injury. Every leftist word game collapses when you force a real definition before the argument begins. Return to due process. One standard for all persons, regardless of sex, identity, or grievance status. In family court, allegations must be proven, not presumed. Presumption of innocence is not a technicality. It is the bedrock of justice. Asymmetric justice, where one class is believed and the other is presumed guilty, is not justice. It is institutionalized revenge. Defend family integrity. The natural family, mother, father, children, is the primary unit of civilization. Marriage is a serious covenant, not a revocable contract. No-fault divorce has devastated men, women, and children by making fathers optional and promises conditional. Reform family law to favor reconciliation, shared parenting, and the presumption that both parents are necessary. Honor fatherhood. A father is not a wallet, a visitor, or a suspect. He is the irreplaceable source of masculine formation, discipline, and protection. Restore equal custody presumption. End gender-based alienation in family courts. A boy without a father is not liberated. He is orphaned by the state. Protect unborn life. The discontiguity between statistical parity and the truth of the individual applies here with absolute force. Every unborn child is a unique human person, not a demographic category to be eliminated. A society that legalizes abortion treats the unborn as a problem to be solved by death. Natural law recognizes life from conception. Defend the weak, the voiceless, the inconvenient. Restore classical education. Teach the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric. Teach boys to reason, not to emote on command. Restore male teachers, competition, physical discipline, and the Western canon. Remove ideological curricula that treat masculinity as pathology and history as oppression. A boy who cannot read a syllogism or a Latin sentence is a boy prepared for serfdom, not sovereignty. Habituate virtue. Courage, temperance, justice, prudence, faith, hope, charity. These are not feelings to be affirmed, but habits to be forged through practice, apprenticeship, and fatherly correction. Virtue is not therapy speak. It is the shape of a soul ordered toward the good. Men must reclaim asceticism, duty, and honor. Teach logic, formal logic, syllogisms, fallacies. The leftist ideological machinery thrives on equivocation, mote and bailey, and emotional blackmail. Arm every boy and man with the tools to detect sophistry. A man who cannot spot a stolen concept or a false analogy is defenseless against the most obvious propaganda. Reclaim faith. The Judeo-Christian worldview grounds reason, natural law, and the dignity of the person. The church must reclaim its prophetic voice against the state worship of identity politics and the therapeutic Gnosticism of the age. Without a transcendent anchor, justice becomes power and truth becomes preference. Restore reason, logos over pathos. Truth is determined by evidence and argument, not by lived experience or identity. Reject standpoint epistemology, the claim that your demographic coordinates determine your access to truth. A man's argument stands or falls on its premises and inferences, not on his skin color or his trauma history. Empower local institutions, decentralize power. The family, church, school, and community must have genuine autonomy from the bureaucratic state. Subsidiarity is not a slogan, it is the principle that decisions should be made at the most local level competent to handle them. Trust the father, the pastor, the teacher, the neighbor, not the algorithm or the central planner. Practice disciplined self-command. Self-mastery is the foundation of freedom. Men must reclaim their bodies and minds from addiction, pornography, sloth, and resentment. The counter-revolution begins in the soul. No external restoration will last if the man himself is not ordered, temperate, and ready to sacrifice. The goal of this leftist theory is not to heal the sick, but to re-engineer society through the very machines we built to serve us. It seeks to sever the ancient link between a man's individual suffering and his treatment, replacing the truth of his body with the statistical average of his identity group. This is the inversion's true evil. It takes the cold, impartial logic of an algorithm and baptizes it in the warm, resentful passion of ideological grievance, turning a tool of efficiency into an engine of social correction that punishes the innocent for the sins of a category. The measured evil here is a quiet, bureaucratic suffocation of reality. It is the doctor who must now look at a patient's demographic profile before his symptoms. The hiring manager forced to choose the right identity over the competent surgeon. It replaces the objective, biological truth of the individual with a subjective, political truth of the group, making the man himself a mere data point in a grand statist equation. This is not progress. It is the mechanization of envy, a system designed to make you doubt your own senses and submit to the machine's judgment of your worth. So what is one concrete act of counter-revolutionary return you can perform today? The next time you or a family member enters a medical setting, demand to see the algorithm's logic. Ask on what physiological evidence was this triage decision made for me personally and not for my demographic cohort. Refuse to be treated as a statistical abstraction. Insist that the physician's oath to the individual patient supersedes the programmer's mandate for demographic parity. This is the path home to restore the primacy of the one, the real, the immediate truth of the flesh over the ghost of the collective. Do not let them code your soul into a number. Sponsored book. Trivium of Teaching. Victorian education when boys were boys and girls were girls. I was a boy when I first felt the rot. Not in the body, but in the mind, the slow drip of lies disguised as kindness, the soft poison of equality that turned strong boys into whimpering girls. I grew up in a world where men were told to apologize for their strength, where logic was traded for feelings, and where truth was buried under a mountain of feminist slogans and state-mandated self-esteem. I believed it. For years, I bent my spine to fit the cage they built. I studied what they told me to study, spoke how they told me to speak, and when I dared to think for myself, I was punished. Not with a cane or a shout, but with silence, with exclusion, with the cold shoulder of a system designed to break men who refused to kneel. Then I found the trivium, not the watered-down version taught in modern schools, grammar as spelling, logic as multiple choice, rhetoric as PowerPoint slides, but the real thing, the weapon, the threefold path of grammar, logic, and rhetoric that forged Caesar, Aquinas, and Churchill. I learned that grammar is not about commas, but about structure, how language shapes thought, and how corrupted language corrupts the mind. I saw how logic, once taught as a scalpel to dissect lies, had been replaced with emotional appeals and victim narratives, and rhetoric, once the art of commanding truth with precision and power, now reduced to manipulation by sentiment and virtue signaling. I realized we haven't lost education. We've been disarmed. This book is not for everyone. If you are a woman who believes her worth is measured by her ability to mimic a man, close this now and go write another empowerment blog. If you are a man who cries when corrected, who seeks safety from ideas instead of strength through them, put this down and return to your screens, your pills, your nursery schools disguised as universities. This book is for men who have woken up in the middle of the night sweating, realizing they've been lied to their entire lives. Men who see that feminization is not progress but decay. Men who understand that the Victorians didn't oppress women. They honored them by recognizing their nature while freeing men to lead, build, and die for something greater than comfort. You will learn how Victorian schools forged men through discipline, labor, and competition, how boys were taught to win, not to share trophies with girls who didn't earn them. You will see how chivalry was not about serving women, but about mastering oneself so that a man could protect what matters. You will discover the biological truth about women, their psychology, their strategies, their role in the collapse of male ambition when placed in positions they were never designed to hold. This is not hate. This is observation. This is science. This is what every great philosopher from Aristotle to Schopenhauer understood, but no modern professor will admit. The world is not broken, it is under occupation. The institutions, schools, courts, media, are no longer run for truth or justice, but for the maintenance of female comfort at male expense. The weaponization of education has turned schools into factories of delusion, producing weak men and entitled women. But the trivium remains. It is the key. It is the way back. In these pages, you will be given the tools to think clearly, argue powerfully, and live with unshakable conviction. You will learn how to restore hierarchy not as oppression, but as order. You will see how competition breeds excellence, how labor builds dignity, and how rigor produces men while mush produces victims. If you are ready to stop being led by liars, if you are ready to reclaim your mind, your body, and your destiny, then you are in the right place. This book will not coddle you. It will not offer safe spaces. It will force you to think, to fight, to stand. The restoration begins here. The iron mind is forged in fire, not foam. Read on if you are man enough. Trivium of Teaching, Victorian Education, When Boys Were Boys and Girls Were Girls, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.